So it's left to men like Davis Younts to fight for these Navy SEALs.
You know, I represent Navy SEAls, fighter pilots, Coast Guard rescue swimmers.
Pennsylvania attorney R. Davis Younts successfully defended an evangelical Navy lieutenant.
Lawyer R. Davis Younts says by doing this, the military may have violated the constitutional rights of U.S. troops.
You are an attorney who has successfully defended naval officers.
More than 200 U.S. active duty and retired service members are vowing to hold senior military leaders in the Biden administration who broke the law, as they say, accountable for establishing the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Remember that? The Pentagon made COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory for service members back in August of 2021, and more than 8,400 service members were discharged for not adhering to that. Active duty service members and veterans penning a letter now saying, quote, they would do everything morally permissible and legally possible to hold our own leadership accountable, unquote.
The Pentagon rescinded the vaccine mandate in January of last year after Congress passed language in the National Defense Authorization Act for the 2023 fiscal year, the Defense Department's annual budget calling for it to end. None of those service members, though, who were discharged for not taking the vaccine have been reinstated, although offered to do so. Brianna Cespedes is an involuntary veteran in the U.S. Air Force. She's signed on to this letter. Davis Younts is a military attorney. Welcome, and thanks so much for coming on. Brianna, if we could just start with you. You describe yourself as an involuntary veteran. Why is that the case?
Yeah, so the reason I said involuntary veteran is because literally it was the option that was taken away from me to continue to serve. So I was in the Air Force for almost 5 years, and I got discharged in July of 2022 due to the denial of my religious exemption request. So we ultimately are just standing for the illegality of the mandate and how there was so much punishment and coercion. I was quarantined over 140 days, and there was just so much wrong that was done within the military. And that's why we did this letter and why we're standing up.
And we'll bring in Davis in different perspective, retired as an Air Force JAG because of this mandate. By the way, a very difficult position to get to, obviously a difficult decision to get to. Can you talk about that, Davis, to the viewers here and where you are today versus where you were and what you've seen along the way since the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I've represented hundreds of military members who were fighting what they believed was an illegal vaccine mandate. And worse, in the case of Brianna, the Department of Defense Inspector General put out a memorandum. It went to Secretary Austin. It went to all of the heads of the services saying, look, we've conducted an initial review of the way you're doing these religious accommodation requests, and you are apparently violating federal law and the Constitution because you're not doing what is required, which is an individualized review in each of these cases. That letter was written and sent out to the services in June. Brianna was separated in July. I would have been separated if it wasn't for an injunction in federal court in July, just 6 months short of a 20-year career. When that letter was there, we didn't even get that letter until September. That wasn't made public until September. So what's unfortunate is I almost lost a 20-year retirement, and Brianna was kicked out of the military at a time when Secretary Austin and all of the senior leaders in the military knew that DOD IG was warning them, what you are doing is violating the constitutional rights and the religious freedom of military members, and they persisted anyway.
Wow. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And as the years progress since the height of the pandemic, it seems as though we're learning more about how our military members were treated during this time. Kind of encapsulate this in the letter, writing in part, while implementing the COVID-19 vaccine mandate, military leaders broke the law, trampled on constitutional rights, denied informed consent, permitted unwilling medical experimentation, and suppressed the free exercise of religion. Brianna, you were willing to serve this country, and this is what you received because of your decision here. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it was honestly surprising. I joined the military with a lot of patriotism. I'm Cuban, Mexican American, and I just wanted to give back to this country. And honestly, the fact that when I was standing up for a constitutional reason where there was an illegal mandate being put in place, and none of my leaders were willing to actually stand up, but all of them were willing to compromise. My commander, when he was discharging me, he told me he didn't want to do it, but because he also fell under the same failure that our politicians do, is that they're willing to compromise. And that was sad to me, that I, as an E4, a junior enlisted, had to be the one to actually stand up for principle. The Constitution is what we swear to, and that's what this letter is all about. We swear to defend the Constitution, and we are keeping that oath.
Davis, final thought to you. How do you separate this argument about the COVID-19 vaccine mandate, but the other shots that soldiers have to undergo that are also mandatory? Why is this different?
Well, in the case of the COVID-19 vaccine, there was no FDA-approved product that was made available to military members. The only thing that was made available to us as military members was the emergency use authorization product. At the time the Pentagon issued the mandate, there was no FDA-approved product that had been produced or made available to military members. The other issue here is thousands of military members, like myself, submitted religious accommodation requests. For all other vaccines prior to this, there have always been religious accommodation requests granted. For this vaccine uniquely, the military engaged in a pattern of behavior where they ignored the law, they ignored federal law and the Constitution, and simply chose to deny religious accommodation requests without an individualized review. Those are two reasons why this was so different.
Yeah, very clearly stated. Wanted to make sure, for our viewers' sake, they would understand that as well as us as well. We appreciate that. Brianna Cespedes sharing your story in Davis, Younts.